Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Bite Size Podcast. I'm your host Clayton, and today I'm here to do a little solo, uh, if I must. It's obviously been a tough period for Arsenal at the minute, but yeah, here to do a little solo, reviewing and recapping the Man United game briefly before turning attention to tomorrow. It's a big week for us, obviously. Out of the similar theme to previous years as an Arsenal fan, where it feels like there's one week or a one period of time which kind of ends the season. And I remember for years it was like around the kind of last 16 quarterfinal stage of the Champions League where things will go tits up in the league as well. But yeah, similar but different. Yeah, obviously lost the first leg of the EFL Cup. I think prior to that we'd obviously dropped points away at Brighton. And now we're out of the FA Cup. So this season is hell on earth. It's been a really challenging season this one, and I don't know. I've got my reasoning. I think my rational thing. My brain's a weird one. Like I'm someone that has a brain that is like literally 50% emotional and 50% like extreme rationale and logic, and it's a blessing and a curse because it's a blessing because I get to really feel my emotions, but I can also rationalize things quite well in my head. But it's a curse because sometimes you just want to feel your emotions and you don't want the rationale behind it. And I think that's where my brain kind of illustrates the fan base at the minute. I think where there's half that are like, it's the end of the world. And like even that's very extreme to be fair. There's a lot of people that are understandably pissed off, frustrated and stuff. But then there's also another half of people that are in a camp where I think they can explain why things are unpanning the way they are despite the disappointment. And it's one of them. There's no right or wrong way to perceive things, right? Your perceptions are based on lots of different factors and stuff. But it's just a rough period. I'm going to try actually keep this one bite sized today. Try keep the name in check of the channel. The Man United game, flipping hell. I think if it was a one-off game in isolation, we'd all be saying it weird shit. It's football. We'd all be saying like the goal came against the run of play. How did we not score? Kai Havertz, by the way, like Arteta's press conference today was absolutely brilliant because of his support and defense of Kai Havertz. Like, no matter what your opinion is on Kai Havertz, and I must stress, I'm not trying to defend these things at all, but the shit that him and his wife have had to deal with this week, like, I do think comes from the minority of people, but flipping out, how even those minority of people think stuff like that is acceptable, I have no idea. But yeah, going back to the game, we had his chance. We worked Rice into a couple of areas really nicely when he came on. Should have scored with a header. There was another one where he took a shot with his left foot. Odegaard missing a penalty. But I think that, again, I must stress, if it was a one-off thing in isolation, we'd all be saying, like, yeah, that was a weird fucking game of football. How did we not win that? But the concern is it's not just a one-off now. And it's not one for today. It's maybe one for on Thursday. Got a really exciting guest coming on. Who I'll talk about at the end. It's probably one for Thursday where we do a little bit more on like a higher level thing of, we'll obviously be reviewing the Tottenham game on Thursday, but I think I'm going to try to keep it as a more higher level discussion on like the themes around Arsenal at the minute. Like, is this a one-off in terms of the finishing? Is Arteta cited sample sizes as one thing in the previous press conference? Is there a big enough sample size to draw a conclusion on the finishing level? Where are we in terms of squad building? What happened in the summer? Like, they're all questions that I don't really want to talk about today. I just want to talk about the game. And I'm in that camp of like, what the fuck? I don't know how we've lost that. The one thing I'd say though, we obviously scored straight after the red. Momentum looked like it was shifting. It shifted quickly. But then there was I can't remember the timeline in my head here, but I feel like Man United then rode the wave a little bit. Like in the second half, especially after that red, I felt like it was coming, right? That's when the Rice header came. That's when the Havertz chance came. That's when I believe the penalty was as well. Let me just check the timeline on that. Yeah, the penalty came after the red as well. But then after that, like extra time, we looked awful. And that's a concern. Like they were down to 10 men. And yeah, there were periods after the red card where I thought, oh yeah, we've got him here. But then after that, it didn't really look like we were doing anything. And that's a concern. And I think, again, there's things that I think can be explained, right? Like the squad is decimated at the minute, but I still think we pretty much played our full strength team that was available. And I know it's not the full strength team that we'd like to be playing right now. And I think there's a lot of players that are there that look like they're first team players, but let's be real, they're probably flagging in terms of fatigue because of the knock on impact of them having to have played through periods where they're fatigued because of other squad players not being available. But still, the performance prior to the red card and the performance in extra time was not good enough, regardless of the situation and the circumstances. I'm someone that I think can explain most things this season as rotten luck. And I get it. You're not going to be able to play to your plan A without your plan A squad being fully fit and available, but you should still be able to put together a performance better than we did with the players that were available, in my opinion. And it's really disappointing. Again, got lots of thoughts and opinions that I want to discuss more on Thursday's episode, because I think that's a chance to have like more of a detailed chat with someone. And like I said, the guest is really yeah, looking forward to having him on. Really cool guest to have on. So that's more for Thursday. But it's a tough period. I'll just shout out Nick Fadley's in morning, afternoon, mate. Yeah, indeed. He's going for 2-2 Spurs. Sorry, 2-2 Spurs. He's going 2-2 versus Spurs in the North London derby tomorrow. I'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, just wanted to touch on the game, like, and literally keep it bite-sized. It's not one where I think I need to analyze things till the cows come home. Like, a couple things though, like in terms of our patterns, like they are a bit predictable, aren't they? Like, I still think they're effective at generating chances, but we don't look like we have many other routes to goal other than our plan A. And like, one thing that's really been getting on my nerves, this is such a specific thing, but we do this thing where we progress the ball through the first and middle third really nicely, and we work like typically one of the fullbacks into a central zone really, really nicely. And if it's not one of the central fullbacks, it's either the left eight or the right eight on either side. And there's like a large distance between the opposition midfield line and the opposition's defensive line, where there's the ability to drive with the ball. And I feel like with this Arsenal team, we get the ball in that area in between the two lines and we put it straight out to the winger too quickly. And it's like you've got acres of space there. And I know we don't always get acres of space, but I noticed it again on Sunday. There was a period where I can't remember who it was, but they had a lot of space. They were running centrally. They had the ability to run centrally, but they straight away just popped it out to the winger. And then the wingers doubled up on there. And that is, again, it's one particular thing that I noticed that's really getting on my nerves, but it almost screamed to me of like the overcoaching side of things. And again, I'm not someone that actually personally falls into that camp of like I think there is definitely an element of overcoaching, but I'm not quite subscribed to how severe I think the impact is compared to other people. But there's certain elements of it where I see it in game and I'm like, this is not good. Again, I'll leave it there for the Man United game. I think that is a game that can literally be summarized as shit happens in football and you can't always explain it. We created chances. It's disappointing that a lot of those chances came in a game state where they were down to 10 men, and that was only for a small window as well. Like I said, in the first half, didn't really look like we were doing much. Extra time, awful. Absolutely awful. And then the penalties, like, it's I've never been one of these people, like, it's a lottery. I think you need an element of luck in a penalty shootout, but like the team that preps best will typically win, and the team that has the better penalty takers and the better goalkeeper will typically win. And the clip going around of Raya's, I can't work out if it's funny or pissing me off, but I'm trying. Like, I after a penalty shootout, it's rare that I blame it on a goalkeeper. Let me just say that. So yeah, really disappointing. Gutted, really. We're out of the FA Cup. It looks like we'll be out of the EFL Cup. Sorry, I don't think we'll go on and pull off a miracle in Newcastle. Um, I've got a thing in my head that I'll say out loud without really engaging in, and again, it's probably one for Thursday. I don't think any other club at this top level in any other league in Europe would still be expected to go on and try win the league in the same circumstances that we're in terms of what we faced with the suspensions. You can argue whether it's self-inflicted or if it was harsh, but they were 2 games that we dropped points in because of controversial red cards that I don't think we would have dropped points in had we had 11 players on the pitch. And I'm not trying to use it as an excuse. I'm just trying to explain where my head is at. That immediately sets you back in terms of buffer room. You then add that with the injuries, and the injuries has with Arsenal never been like one long this season, never been one long list of like 8 to 12 players are out. It's been a sequence of blocks of injuries, which has just robbed us of being able to generate any momentum and robbed us of being able to maximize the usage of the squad and keeping people fresh. And as a result, I think we're looking so fatigued at the minute. But going back to that kind of hypothesis, is there any other club in Europe in the top leagues that you would expect to still go on and challenge for and win the league in the same circumstances? And I honestly don't think so. I think you just have to look at Man City. Like, okay, fair enough. It wasn't immediately confessed that they're not going to win the league or not expected to win the league when Rodri was out, but then they had their own defensive injuries, right? And like you saw the knock-on impact of them. I don't think there's many other teams that would be capable of being able to go on and challenge in the same circumstances. And I think the fact that we're second still, granted we're 6 points behind and Liverpool have a game in hand, but the fact that we're second kind of, and the conversation is still around going on and the expectations, I think speaks volumes to the level that we think this manager is. And I definitely believe he is, but I don't know. It's one of them. Got lots of thoughts and opinions, and I'm looking forward to getting it all out on the table on Thursday. As part of Thursday's episode, we'll obviously be reviewing the North London derby, and I think this is a big week for Arsenal. Like the fan base is, for the first time, feels fractured in a long time, and I think tomorrow is an opportunity to try and galvanise us as a fan base and as a team and as a football club. Tottenham have their own injuries. They're without their first choice centre backs in Romero and Van de Ven. Ben Davies may be available, and I've got a feeling if he is, he may go in maybe for Archie Gray. They obviously played 120 minutes against Tamworth. Basuma played all of that. So do they go for Bergvall in the 6? Will they play Sarr, Maddison? I don't know. But they're a team that have their own injury problems at the minute. And I think the one thing that we can feel confident and comfortable in this Arsenal team is when there is space to attack, we look like we know what we're doing. I think it's only really against the low blocks that we look a little bit devoid of ideas and offensively stale. I don't think Tottenham are going to come and do that. I must say, I do think this Tottenham side are, in periods, more defensively solid than everyone makes out. I think there was a bit of naivety when Ange first came in, and yeah, some of the football was unusual, but attractive. But there are periods in this game where Arsenal are going to be uncomfortable. Like Tottenham are going to have a lot of the ball in periods, and Tottenham will also look, I think, structurally more solid than people tend to associate with this Tottenham team. But I don't think they're capable of doing that for a full 90 minutes. So the away game was obviously just 1-0. And it was a bit of a drab game. I think this one will be slightly different. I think the element of the two decimated teams opens up an element of unpredictability and chaos. I don't like, and even this Arsenal team in the last few weeks, we haven't necessarily conceded high quality chances, but there's been periods where we look a little bit suspect in transition, and like teams are running through us. And this Tottenham team, I think, is capable of translating that into quality chances with some of their offensive players. I'm concerned. in terms of the freshness and the availability. Jury and Timber, it sounds like it was just cramp, so he'll be okay. But even I'm like, I don't know if he'll be able to play. Like this is where, again, the squad depth is just mind blowing in terms of how many knock on injuries we've had. Like Jesus now, I mean, I feel gutted for him. Like, it sounds like that's the worst case scenario it could have been. But this is a game and a period of time where it's unfortunate we don't have Ben White. It's unfortunate we don't have Tomiyasu because we could do with them. In terms of predicted team, I think Raya obviously in goal. I'll come back to the right back and centre mid because I think a lot of it is dependent on Timber and Partey. Saliba, Gabriel. I think Lewis Skelly will play. I think Calafiori might have been confirmed injured. Odegaard, obviously, and then, like I said, I'll come back to the rest. I've got a sneaky Raheem Sterling will play. I thought he looked encouraging in periods. I must say, it only looked like a 15-minute spell where it was encouraging, and then Malacia came on and kind of locked him down. But he showed an element of something that we've been missing. Just someone to take some initiative, take a risk, drop a shoulder, go inside, outside, to be direct that we miss. And I think, I must say, it was only a 15-20 minute spell where he was good, because then he did start to lose the ball quite a lot after that. But I think he'll be rewarded with a start. So it's now, what do I think he'll do at right back and midfield? Timber looked like he was flagging to me in extra time. But then is this a game where you can play Partey right back in? Like we've all spoken about and have opinions on what we think the midfield's like without Partey from a ball progression perspective. I'm really struggling to nail my colours to Lamar, so I'll just talk through the different possibilities. I think one is obviously Partey at right back with Declan Rice holding, or Jorginho with Declan Rice or Marino at left eight, and the other is Timber at right back, which would then have Partey at the base and Rice at left eight. I think that would be the preference. It's just it all depends on Timber's fitness, essentially, right? So yeah, we'll see. And then, like I said, I think front three will actually be Sterling, Havertz, and Martinelli. And I really hope Kai Havertz gets a goal in this. Arteta cited just 20 days ago against Ipswich, the whole stadium was singing the Waka Waka song and singing his name. And he's been great for us. Like, no doubt he's been great for us. Obviously, there's clear question marks on his finishing ability and his reliability and his conviction as a centre forward. But let's not forget what he did for us in the calendar year of 2024, especially considering how his start to the club went. He is someone that I think is suffering from just not having a credible option to rotate in and around him. Like when Odegaard came out, his workload increased. He took on the role of the kind of pressing that Odegaard does and the in and out of the central and right areas. Like everything for me this season in terms of how we're looking and how we've ended where we are is a knock-on impact of so many factors, including the suspensions, the lack of available players for injury as well. It's tough, but I think tomorrow is just, if I could ask one thing of everyone in the stadium, like the atmosphere was flat on Sunday, the atmosphere was flat against Newcastle. Tomorrow it's fucking Tottenham at home. Like, this is a bit of a free hit for them. Their league season is almost in disarray. It's like it could very quickly be a nothing league season for them. But they're still in the EFL Cup, they're still in the FA Cup, and they're still in the Europa League. So they've got a lot to play for in other competitions. So this could be a bit of a free hit for them, which I don't think is a bad thing for us. But like, there's going to be periods in this game where Tottenham have the ball. Don't get stressed. Don't groan. Like, this is one where, like, you know when you kind of go to a family occasion when you're younger and it's like you got to be on best behavior, or like this is tomorrow. Just, if I'm a head teacher, like, best behavior from the supporters, like, just get behind the bloody team. Like, regardless of how you're feeling at the minute, tomorrow, all that's important is bringing your full self for 90 minutes and get behind them, because when the fan base is fractured as it is, which I find mind-blowing. And again, I've got so many thoughts on where we are as a football club, where this manager is, what we should be doing versus what we are doing. I've got so many strong opinions on that, which we'll talk about on Thursday. But when you're in a moment like this, you need unity. And that's on us. That's something we can control. We can control when you're sat in that stadium how we show up to the fans. And I get it. It's tough when it's a bit of a slog against Man United. It's a bit of a slog against Newcastle. The people are talking about football burnout, right? I get it. But this is a one-off game where you can forget the context of everything and just bring your full self and bring it loud and proud. And we have to make this place hostile. It can be hostile. It hasn't been hostile for a while. We need to make it hostile tomorrow. And we need to go and win because this is a big game. Saturday is a big game against Villa. We've then got a game against Dynamo Zagreb in the Champions League where we can hopefully try and rotate a little bit. I say rotate. I don't even know who we can rotate in at the minute, but one game at a time. But just tomorrow is absolutely massive. And yeah, in terms of how I think the game will go, like I do think we'll win. If I'm doing my score prediction, I've got 3-2 Arsenal. I think Tottenham will create chances that make us uncomfortable, but I think we'll absolutely be able to create. I think we will be able to create more chances of quality than we did against Newcastle and Man United. The question is then finishing, and Newcastle and Man United are games where we kind of look back at and think, oh, like, yeah, it's been reviewed in different lenses, let's say. But if I said to you, we can create more chances than we did against Man United and Newcastle, you take your chances with that, right? Because we still created the chances. What is the stat? Was it like 1 goal from 8 expected goals or something? I can't remember if it was just in those games or over a longer period. But the question is the finishing, right? And I think the other question for me is the ability to sustain a game model that creates chances in all game states rather than just in one period of play. But this Tottenham side will give us the opportunity to do that, I think. So bring your fucking energy, bring your passion, bring your support. They need us right now. They absolutely need us. I've got 3-2 to the Arsenal, but I think it will be a game of discomfort in periods, but I think we can absolutely go and do them. Thank you for tuning in. If you have, always appreciate the support. It's it's really tough to talk through things when we're in a headspace like this as a football club. But I feel fine about the kind of higher level, long term where we're headed as a football club. It's just this season in isolation is a really tough one to stomach and process and talk about consistently at the minute, especially when I think there's so many disjointed and differing opinions, right? But that's the beauty of football. It's all a game of opinions and perspectives. But I mentioned a special guest. Really excited to chat with him. I've got Simon Collins, who is the sports reporter for The Standard, coming on Thursday. And we're obviously going to review the North London derby. Like I said, have a little bit more of a higher level chat around everything going on at Arsenal at the minute. So with that in mind, it's not going to be a live episode. It's going to be pre-recorded. So please, in the comments on this episode, please drop your questions for us to cover. I'm guessing we'll cover things like squad building, the summer, why we are where we are, expectations. Are we assessing Arsenal on fair expectations at the minute? The thoughts on the manager. Have your say. Have your say by feeding into the format of the pod, which I'll do by taking in the questions. So yeah, if you've listened to this, thanks a lot. Please drop the stream a like. It goes a long way to these small fan-led channels. A comment here and there always goes a long way as well. But especially ahead of Thursday, please drop in some comments with your questions for the episode to ask Simon. And like I said, we'll be back on Thursday to review the North London derby, talk about all of the things going on around Arsenal at the minute. And then on Friday, I'll be back with Lee Jackson, who is the Aston Villa correspondent for Planet FPL, to preview that game. So lots of content coming up. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss when I go live with everyone. That's everything for today. Just final plug. If you're listening on podcast, please give it a 5-star review as well. That helps a lot. Like I said, tomorrow's a big one. Put the FA Cup behind us now. It's gutting, but put it behind us. It's gone. It's done. EFL Cup, put the first leg behind you. Let's worry about that later. Just everything in on tomorrow. This could be something that really galvanizes and unites the fan base, and we need it at the minute. So everyone get behind the football club and the manager at the minute. Let's go and bloody do it. Up the Arsenal.